Hello everyone and welcome back to Football Manager 2018 and this latest part of these experiments where we're seeing what would happen if the great teams all around Europe had been given back all of the players that they've let go over the last 10 to 15 years, depending on how good the players are. Today we're going to take a look at Dortmund, who are famous for letting their players not just leave, but leave to their rivals Bayern Munich. And it really has made them sort of fall back from the time when they did win a couple of Bundesliga titles under Jurgen Klopp in the sort of 2010 to 2012 period. They of course also made the Champions League final around that time but weren't able to win it. But we've given them back all of the players that they've let go over quite a long period of time. Now, there's not as many players as we saw with the likes of Porto, but there are arguably some much better players, starting with the best of the bunch, Mikkel Moreno. As a Newcastle fan, he's a very, very good player from what we can see. And at 21 years old, a lot of room to develop, so surprising to let him see. I think he's just confirmed a full transfer to Newcastle for about £7 million. The biggest money signing they let go was Ousmane Dembele, who's moved to Barcelona as a replacement for Neymar. He's very highly rated in the game, and I'm sure he will come on leaps and bounds in the next 5 years. In his time at Dortmund, I'm not too familiar with his stats over that period. Obviously, he joined them, £24.5 million they paid for him from Rennes, and then made a £60 million plus profit, £70 million actually profit on him in just one season. He only got 6 goals in 32 league games, but apparently worth £130 million in the end. Matthias Ginter, another young player, 23-year-old German, recently left for Borussia Mönchengladbach for about £15 million. Turning again another £7 million profit on the player after he played quite a few games for them in the Bundesliga. Then there's Emre Mor, who's moved to Vigo recently, Celta Vigo, signed for £7 million, again there 1 year, not even 1 year, 6 months from the look of it, before moving on for £11.5 million to Celta Vigo. Another highly rated young player though, so I thought I'd bring him back to see how he develops over the next 5 years. Then there's Fernet Bender, one of the Bender brothers. He left last season for £11.25 million after a good long period at the club. He's had quite a long career, really, given how young he is, 14 years in the game, and he's only 28 years old, so I'm not quite sure how that's happened. But they've got him back in central midfield. Then we get on to some of the much, much bigger names. So you've got Henrik Mkhitaryan, recently joined Arsenal. In this game, he was still at Manchester United. £34.5 million they sold him for after buying him for 23.5. Did very, very well there, part of an impressive lineup, but actually joined after they'd won the Bundesliga title, so not part of that team. Then there's Mats Hummels, one of the great German central defenders at the moment. £28.5 million they got for him, selling him to Bayern Munich. Another one that went to their very dangerous rivals in the Bundesliga after being such a stalwart of their team for such a long time. Signed for £3.7 million from Bayern originally, so he actually returned home. But a very, very good central defender, and he'll add a lot to the team coming back to it. Then you've got Ilkay Gundogan, one who moved to Manchester City. He spent a good few years at Dortmund. He was a young player back then after joining from Nuremberg for just £3.5 million. Left for £22 million, and Gundogan has really come on leaps and bounds under Pep Guardiola at Manchester City. Then there's Ciro Immobile, who was a bit of a surprise. I didn't even realise he was at Dortmund. It was only a short stint. You can see he's moved around so often for increasing amounts of money, really. You can see he moved to Genoa before going on to Torino, where he got an awful lot of goals, 22 in 33 in Serie A, after getting 28 in 37 in Serie B. He then moved to Dortmund. He only got 3 in 24, so they shipped him out to Sevilla, where he barely got in the team. On loan at Torino, where he had a really good season in the past, but didn't do well. But since moving to Lazio, he has been absolutely on form, tearing up that league this season in real life, and a good year before that as well. So making his move back to Dortmund, having matured an awful lot and become a dangerous striker. Then there's Kevin Campbell, who's currently at Red Bull Leipzig. Moved there for 17.75 from Leverkusen after Dortmund had him for a couple of seasons but didn't really use him. Made a little bit of a loss to him, selling him to Leverkusen. Funny that he's played for both Red Bull sides, the Austrian one and the German one, but started out at Leverkusen as well. He's sort of drifted around a lot, but seems to have become quite a good player over the last couple of years. Then there's, of course, the most famous. It's Robin Lewandowski, £78 million valuation in the game at the moment, but he's been prolific consistently for both Dortmund and Bayern. If anything, he's stepped it up at Bayern with 2 30-goal seasons in the Bundesliga in just 32 and 33 games. Absolutely deadly up front, and I'm sure he will do wonders for Borussia Dortmund. Famously nearly joined Blackburn Rovers not too long ago, but moved to Dortmund instead and did so well before leaving on a free transfer, which must have really stung Dortmund fans. And finally, you've got Ivan Perisic, another player I didn't realise was at Dortmund, but he was there for a couple of years, around the time they were winning the Bundesliga as well. Only made a very small profit on him, given how many games he played and how well he seemed to do. But it's really since he joined Inter Milan that he's become an absolutely top-class player. Had a good spell at Wolfsburg as well. And a lot of these players are quite dangerous players, so there's not as many as in previous experiments, but when you add them to the Dortmund team, they really do add up to a lot, because obviously they've still got Aubameyang at the moment, they've got Royce, they've also now got Mario Götze back at the club as well, Yarmolenko's in there, Pulisic, one of the great young players at the moment, Papadopoulos in there, and then you've got Bartra still at the club at the moment, and then just Shinji Kagawa, all of these really good players who are going to continue to do well for them. So I genuinely think Dortmund are one of the few teams that we're doing this with who could actually win the Champions League this season. So we'll have to see how they do. I know a lot of you have been asking for me to bring back the famous managers. In this case, it would be Jurgen Klopp, but I think it's a bit too controversial. If I bring back the wrong manager and somebody thinks there was a better one, it's just going to wind people up. So I'm going to leave the existing manager in. With the good players, if they do well, get a higher reputation, they will bring in better and better managers. So I don't think it matters as much as the personnel they have in the team. But it'll be interesting to see if they can win the Bundesliga or the Champions League in the next 5 years. So let's skip ahead 5 years' time and see how they got on. Well, we are now 5 years into the future, and if we start to take a look at Dortmund through the 5 years they've had, you can see their pre-season, straight off the bat, absolutely exceptional. Not the biggest teams in the world, but they did manage to beat Bayern Munich 3-2, Pulisic and 2 for Castro. Beating Bayern Munich and winning the German Super Cup. So starting this experiment off with their first piece of silverware, they then got through in the first round of the German Cup. A difficult start to the Bundesliga though, not winning games against teams they really should be beating, and actually losing to Bayer Leverkusen and then drawing with Spurs in the Champions League. They did draw with Real Madrid at home, which is a good result, and drew with Bayern at home as well, 2-2, before beating Hapoel Beersheva, I guess, I don't know how you pronounce that, but 4-0. Then beat them again, so that took them up to 8 points, which is not bad after 4 games. They were knocked out of the German Cup by Bayern Munich, though, a bit of revenge there after the Super Cup. Drew with Spurs once more, and against Real Madrid away from home, they lost 2-0, 2 goals for Cristiano Ronaldo, but not very good form here. Only about 7 or 8 wins across a lot of games, so they need to step it up, but I think they would have got through that Champions League group stage matches, and as we go down, they did pick up their league form before more draws, but they're actually in the Europa League, so despite finishing with 9 points, they just missed out on qualification, Spurs pipping them to it. But in the Europa League, much more likely to win the competition, and they beat Krasnodar 4-0, beaten 3-0 by Bayern Munich in the Bundesliga, but got through in the Europa League. Beat Napoli 5-0. Lewandowski with 2, Royce, Perisic, Götze all getting goals, and in the return leg at 0-0 saw them comfortably into the quarter-finals. And then they drew with Arsenal, Perisic with the goal away from home, and at home they were beaten 2-0. So at the moment, Ajax, the only team we've done this with who've managed to make the final of a European competition, and that was the Europa League, but they were beaten in that final. So whether Dortmund can improve on that is yet to be seen. Now I already know that they did not win the league in this season. They were 11 points off Bayern Munich, so not good enough really. Only 3 points clear of Schalke, and 4 points clear of Stuttgart. Only 5 points clear of Leverkusen, so not too far off missing out altogether, but a second place finish is not what we're after. The following season, they started off with a good win, 6-0 in the German Cup against the German minnow. And back in the Champions League as well. 1-1 draw with Ajax. Bartra getting the goal there. They should really be winning that at home. And then beaten 3-0 by Chelsea away from home. And drawing with Spartak Moscow. So 2 points from their first 3 games. They did draw with Bayern 2-2 in the league, but then beat Spartak Moscow 3-0. That puts them on 5 points. And then against Ajax, they got another win. So up to 8 points, but I think they had to beat Chelsea to go through at home. And they did. 2-0. Götze and Lewandowski scoring for Borussia Dortmund, rolling back the years. And they do manage to qualify for the knockout stages, almost certainly. Lost to Red Bull Leipzig there. And again, inconsistent league form. Knocked out by Hertha Berlin in the German Cup. So still no success in that competition. But their league form not looking like Champions form as far as I can tell. They did lose at home. Mats Hummel sent off just 21 minutes into a really big game, and Luis Suarez put them to the sword. But at the new camp, they managed to win 2-1 and go through on away goals. Zielinski and Lewandowski with the goals for them, knocking out Barcelona and making the quarterfinals of the Champions League, where they had to take on Arsenal. They lost 3-1 at home, which is surely going to be too much to overcome. And as you can see, a 1-1 draw at the Emirates means they get knocked out and Arsenal make it to the semi-finals of the Champions League. But that's an impressive run to have beaten Barcelona. But again, their league form really, really poor, and they did not manage to win the title in this season either. As you can see, finished 4th in the league, only 1 point clear of Champions League football. But interestingly, the title went to Bayer Leverkusen, with Bayern finishing 3rd. So if ever they were going to win the title, that was the season they would have done it. But they absolutely failed. Despite having the least amount of losses in the entire league, there were too many draws and it cost them the title. So obviously, as we go forward in these experiments, they're losing players on transfers and various other ways, so they need to make the most of it. I think this is a season where they've got to do it. If they're going to win anything, it needs to be now, and it's a very good start to the campaign. They beat Besiktas 3-1, lost to Real Madrid 1-0 away from home, no big shock there, but beat Karabag, looking like they're going to comfortably go through in that group. Beat them again, so already on 9 points, and then beat Besiktas, so definitely through in the Champions League, but lost 4-0 at home to Real Madrid, so not looking like they're going to do too well, and their form absolutely dipping at this stage in the season. But they did manage to go through in the German Cup, and in the knockout stages of the Champions League, well, they actually got knocked out by Wolfsburg in the German Cup quarter-final, which isn't ideal. But in the Champions League, they drew 0-0. Again, it's Arsenal that they've got to come past, but 0-0 at home. If they get a score draw away from home, they go through, and they're beaten 2-1. They really do have a bogey team with Arsenal. As much as Arsenal are humiliated for being beaten by Bayern Munich, they are at least managing to beat Borussia Dortmund and have some success in the Champions League. But really, it's going to be the Europa League, I think, if Borussia Dortmund are going to win anything. And the following season in the Bundesliga, they actually finished 3rd place, so a 1-step improvement. But again, missing out on the title when Bayern didn't win it. 5 points off Leverkusen. How are Dortmund not winning this title? They only lost 4 games, but they drew 11, and that's a problem. They needed just 2 more wins, really, or 3 more wins, and they would have taken the title that season. So really frustrating that they can't convert those draws into victories. And again, a perfect pre-season. They had Valencia, who they beat in the Champions League, and then lost to Shakhtar, which could really hold them up. Drew with Man United, so only 4 points at this stage. Lost to Bayern at home, which won't help them, but through in the German Cup. Lost to United again, so I think they might struggle to go through here. They did beat Valencia once more, though, and then against Shakhtar, they won 3-0. So they may have just got through, I think, on 10 points there. In the Bundesliga, quite a few defeats there, but then putting together a nice winning run through in the German Cup. A very nice winning run there. But knocked out by Borussia Mönchengladbach in the quarterfinals of the German Cup, so still not won that competition. Lost 2-1. Real Madrid in the Champions League knockout stages. Isco with 2 goals in 4 minutes. Not the best start. And in the return leg, they drew 1-1, but the damage was done at home, and then knocked out at the first knockout stage. Not too bad in the Bundesliga, but too many defeats this season after having pretty much the opposite problem before that. And it means they did finish in 4th place. Again, 1 point clear of Schalke in the race for the top 4, but this time Bayern return to form, take the title, 11 points clear of Borussia Dortmund, and just not good enough really. They have not been playing well enough in the league, and in the final season that we're looking at, again, really inconsistent. You can see it already. They drew with Chelsea, still in the Champions League, at home, but lost to Inter away and drew with PSV at home. So only 2 points, a really tough group that. Then beat PSV, lost to Bayern, lost to Chelsea, and managed to beat Inter, but I'm pretty sure they're out of that competition. Through in the German Cup, I think they're in the Europa League, beaten 4-1 by Köln. Again, really struggling in the cup competitions. Drew with Real Sociedad. I don't know if they're actually called Real San Sebastian now, or if that's just a different name. Maybe you guys can let me know in the comments. But in the return leg at home, they won 3-1. So can they finally win this European competition? If we go down to the second round, they beat Benfica 3-1 away from home. A good Europa League win there. And 3-0 at home, meaning they're in the quarter-finals, where they had to take on Napoli, but a 2-1 defeat at home. A man sent off when they were 1-0 up, lost it 2-1, and in the return leg, they drew 2-2. So that's it. They haven't won anything. Their league form, not, I don't think anyway, good enough. If we have a quick look at the table and look at where they finished in 6th place. That is embarrassing for them. I didn't think their form was that bad, but apparently it was. 31 points off Bayern Munich at the top. They lost 13 of 34 games. And that's humiliating, really, and puts an end to this experiment quite comfortably. They really, really have disappointed. There is no doubt about that. And wouldn't even be in the Champions League if we went forward one more season. You can see, if anything, they're declining. Just so poor. If we look at their transfer history, we might get a clue as to why they declined so much. In their first season, you can see all the players they brought in there, but they made £96 million selling players. So who did they sell? Yarmolenko went to Real Madrid, Moore to Arsenal, Campbell to Napoli, Shaheen Toprak went to Bayern, Immobile went to Man City, Kagawa went to China. Just too many players going there in the first season. The second year, as you can see, 77 million brought in. They did sign a couple of big name players, Felipe Anderson and Zielinski coming in, but sold Guerrero to Man United and Pastapopoulos. No other really big names going there though. The following year, they signed nearly £100 million worth of players, Szczesny, Brandt and Strachowska coming in. But the players out, Pasalak went to Bayern, strengthening them. Schürrle went to Zenit, and Castro went to Zenit as well. And then £40 million spent, but £100 million of players sold. You can see Ousmane Dembele going to Bayern. Still, the theme and pattern continues of Bayern stealing Dortmund's players when they need to improve their squad. Szczesny went to Lazio, Aubameyang went to China, Perisic went to the Ukraine, and really just all the big names sort of left at this point. Jadon Sancho going on loan to Köln. A few Man City fans who didn't want him to leave. £80 million of players spent. They're not exactly failing to replace players, but they're just not doing enough. You can see here Julian Brandt going to Man City, £76 million. Half of that money reinvested in Grimaldo, but just not keeping their players in the squad. And as you can see at the moment, Dahoud, the latest player to go. I'm not sure what happened to Lewandowski. If we have a look, he is still at Dortmund on 300 grand a week. And his goal scoring has been very consistent. Still, that has continued. It hasn't changed. He got 30 goals in all competitions, 25, 30, 34, and now 20. Falling down a little bit because he is obviously getting on at 33 years old. But really disappointing. I thought Borussia Dortmund would be the team that could actually go and win the league, but not, or win a European competition at least. But neither of those things happened, and it shows that they are definitely not the leading team in Germany on this evidence. So that's going to be it for this experiment. Do drop a like on the video if you're still enjoying this series. Let me know names of teams you would like to see me do this with, and I'll continue to churn them out. Do drop a like on the video if you enjoyed this one. Make sure to subscribe as well for the next experiment when it's out in a couple of days' time. You can also support the channel on Twitter, Patreon, all of that good stuff down below. But until next time, see ya.